Hello, everybody. My name is Jonah Whitcamper. Welcome to the 69th or 70th call of the Amazon Investor Coalition. This is our first call of 2022. Our goal is to advance forest-friendly economic development and the rule of law across the Amazon region of South America. This week, we are featuring the work of the IDB in Amazon Initiative. IDB is the Inter-American Development Bank, one of the leading mechanisms of finance of social and economic development across the Latin America region. And we are going to be hearing from Yves Lesenfant and Daniel Hincapie. Yves and Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jonah. Thank you, everybody. Happy New Year for all. And it's very nice to start the year with this opportunity. And thank you again, Jonah, for all the networking effort behind that. So basically here with Daniel, the idea today is to present to you the Amazon initiative that the IDB is now leading and developing and implementing. And the idea is to see the connection and basically take advantage of all the knowledge you have and the opportunities that we can have in this space to see how we can have a greater impact in the future. So we have a presentation to start, but perhaps just before, I would just like to say I'm Yves, I'm from Belgium. I have a background in conservation and ecology. I've been working for 23 years on the field in Latin America, and mostly I've been living in Venezuela. So I'm an adoptive Venezuelan. And I've been working in the mountains, I've been working in the mining areas, and I've been basically working a lot with local communities during all this time. And I started to work with the IDB in 2006, working on local development, conservation, and also, let's say, sustainable conservation, inclusive conservation in the region. So this is basically where we start this relationship with the IDB. And today I'm in charge within the new Amazon initiative about the forest conservation and all things related with inclusive conservation with local communities and population. So I will let Daniel also present himself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yves. And hello, everyone. A pleasure to be here. I'm Daniel Hincapie. I'm from Colombia, and within the team, I'm responsible for leading the management of the financial resources that the initiative is going to have. And I just recently joined the team, and before that, before this current role, which is it's a recent role, I was actually leading all the fundraising activities for the IDB group in the area of climate conservation and sustainable infrastructure. So I had the privilege of actually leading the fundraising round of the Amazon initiative, and now I'm taking a little bit of a more operational role by actually coordinating especially in the inception phase, the deployment process of the resources of the Amazon initiative. My background is in finance and international affairs. I've been in the IDB for almost 14 years. And before that, I worked in Colombia in several positions in the government and within the international affairs commission of the Colombian Senate. So good to be here. And I know we have a presentation.
Yes. So I'm going to share the presentation, and Daniel will start. As you understand, he's behind all the financial instrument and this important thing from the initiative. So I will see how to share the presentation. Can you see my presentation?
Yeah, we sure can.
Okay, so Daniel.
Thank you, Yves. Well, and I think we thought about how to put together this presentation, and usually we have a couple of slides that actually talk about the importance of the Amazon region, but we thought before that for this particular audience, those slides were really not necessary, were unnecessary, as I think we're all aware of why it's important to work in the Amazon region. So we thought of introducing first some of the key thinking behind the challenges that we perceive for the sustainable development in the Amazon region. And I think, as we all know, in many places in the Amazon region, the sustainable development goals have not been achieved, and we're really not in a really good track of achieving those goals by 2030. And there are many reasons for that, but some of the elements that we think are currently characterizing the economic development models of many areas of the Amazon region are, first of all, models and technologies that are not adapted to the local context. And this is very important because the Amazon biome, the Amazonian territories are very unique in terms of diversity, environmental diversity, but also cultural diversity, and the fact that we have this kind of very unique combination of cities and actually very urban populations that live in those cities in the presence of a very environmentally diverse and rich geographical area. One of the key aspects that sometimes people are not aware of, and is actually very prominent in the most recent report of the Amazon Scientific Panel, is that 18 million people in the Amazon region live in the cities of the Amazon territory. Of course, Manaus is a really great example. And when we talk about sustainable development in the region, we need to think about cities as well, and the way there's a relationship between cities, socioeconomic development, and of course the conservation and protection of the forest. So models and technologies that are not adapted to the context is one of those challenges or those characteristics. Another one is the predominance of primary production-oriented activities that are very extractive in nature and that in many occasions are not leaving all the value that we think could be kept within the Amazonian territories, both environmentally speaking, but also from an income generation point of view. These territories have very low levels of productivity and high levels of informality, and you see significant levels of poverty, even be above the poverty lines of many of the countries in the Amazon region. There are a lot of concentration of benefits in a very small part of the local population. And of course, as we all know, in many regions, there's a widespread loss and degradation of ecosystems of goods and services, and that are very dangerously moving the forest into a potential tipping point scenario. So it's a significant challenge. And these economic models are partially explained by several factors. One of those factors is access and connectivity. We need renewable energy. We need broadband connectivity in order to develop sustainable development models in the territory. Sometimes we talk about bioeconomy, and it's very difficult to export a locally produced agricultural product if you don't have electricity to refrigerate and preserve those products and services. It's very difficult to talk about sustainable tourism if you cannot offer connectivity and broadband access. And even if for conservation activities, we were talking about this amazing NGO in Ecuador that is utilizing a drone technology in order to monitor protected areas managed by indigenous communities. But for that, you need connectivity. So you do need to bring access and connectivity to these territories in order to bring economic development, sustainable economic development. You have a lot of divergent perspectives on development priorities. As we all know, there are very different visions of what the Amazon biome should be and what should be, what should be the economic and development model for the territory. You have issues of land regularization, land rights, and tenure. You have just barriers of knowledge barriers, and access to finance barriers for the adoption of solutions. And then you have issues related to institutional capacity, stakeholder roles, and partnerships. So you have significant challenges that are conducive to some of these results. Next slide. Now, despite these challenges, we do see a confluence of enabling factors. From our perspective as a development bank, the first and foremost, we see a very strong political support to try to really rethink the way sustainable development is performed in the Amazon. And this is coming at the highest levels and is showcased in things such as the Leticia Pact Agreement, or of course the Organization for the Amazon Cooperation Treaty. So we see a very strong political mandate, and part of that political mandate has been received by the IDB do more in the Amazon region. We also see an increase in opportunities related to technology adoption and digital inclusion. And a lot of that and some of the opportunities that we're going to present relate to technology and how can we use technology to bring more resources into the Amazon region. And we're also starting to have interesting conversations about tokenization and about the use of blockchain and this intersection between climate and potentially digital finance in order to mobilize additional resources into the region. And finally, we see, we see a lot of new work related from the IDB that could be applied for the Amazon region. So with that in mind, the IDB recently approved in March of 2021 a new initiative that has the purpose of promoting social, environmental, sustainable, and inclusive development models for the Amazon region that benefits the diverse communities. And this small program actually took a while to put together because it really tries to reflect the different dimensions. Of course, you have an environmental dimension that is very important, but you have a socioeconomic dimension that is equally important. And then you really have to take into consideration the richness in terms of communities and cultures, and the fact that whatever we do has to benefit those communities in the Amazon region, both indigenous populations, Afro-descendant communities that are very prominent in many Amazonian territories, and of course, our local communities. And with that in mind, at this initiative we have, so it's a conceptual framework, so it's a way of thinking about our own financing towards the Amazon region. And it's going to be focused in 4 main thematic pillars. The first 2 on the top of the screen, I think are the most, let's say, intuitive, which are bioeconomy and sustainable agriculture, livestock, and forest management. And here the idea is to start thinking about Amazon positive value chains, to start thinking about promoting bioeconomy by businesses that have both benefits in terms of climate mitigation, but also benefits in terms of biodiversity. And of course, also we're talking about increasing the efficiency in the management of resources. For instance, in the cattle sector in Mato Grosso is very important. We see really good opportunities there about improving the way we do forest management, about thinking about how can we bring the private sector into, thinking about concessions, for instance, for forests. So really thinking about how do we mobilize and think about bringing resources and knowledge and expertise into these 2 sectors. And then there are the other 2 sectors that usually are not as prominent in this type of discussions, but are equally important. Is first of all, human capital and social services. And here we're talking about health, education, and knowledge and skills development in these territories. As we all know, the pandemic has hit really hardly the Amazonian territories, so we need to talk about social services. We need to talk about health and education. And also the topic of sustainable infrastructure and sustainable cities. In our thinking, we need to start thinking about what does it mean to be an Amazonian city? What are the unique advantages of being an Amazonian city? What are the unique challenges, and how can we think about urban development in the context of this territory? So we really want to take this topic that sometimes is a little bit a taboo, actually, from the forefront, and really work with the cities to start thinking about a new development model for these territories. Now the Amazon is a vast, as we all know, territory. So the idea is to work with states, with governments, and with companies, and identify strategically located areas that are rich in biodiversity, or are at a very significant risk of deforestation, and really focus through this conceptual framework in addressing some of these challenges in all of those strategically located areas. So the idea would not be to just go and try to cover the entire biome, but actually focus on specific locations where we see opportunities to demonstrate this model. And then finally, of course, everything that we do in the Amazon has to have 3 transversal areas. Number 1, institutional strengthening, because there's very low capacity in many of these territories, gender diversity, and forest conservation. Nothing that we do, nothing that we finance through this initiative should contribute to the Amazonian, increasing the Amazonian tipping point or degrading the forest. So this is the conceptual framework. Next. And in order to finance, in order to incentivize our clients to finance projects through this conceptual framework. We're putting together a series of financing instruments that are going to be deployed in 3 different ways. First of all, in the form of blended finance resources, concessional finance resources that will be combined with commercial capital and IDB capital to finance particularly biobusinesses in the Amazonian territory. Second, performance-based instruments, including for capital market solutions, for instance, in the form of sustainability-linked loans or performance-based incentives tied to forest finance. So we're thinking about different models, and of course, gender performance-based incentives for gender operations. We're not thinking a lot about REDD+ traditional type of performance-based financing because there's already a lot of money deployed in that category. We're thinking about performance-based in other categories of results-based financing. So nature-based solutions, gender, recovery finance, and of course, thinking about more about changes, especially at the corporate level, through the use of sustainability-linked loans. Technical assistance grants and community grants. So we want to emphasize as well this notion that you need to provide direct access to the small IPLC organizations that are out there that is very difficult for them to access resources from a bank or from other type of organizations. So really thinking about community grants in each of our target countries, which are Amazonian countries. That we're going to be operating as an IDB group, meaning that we're going to be working with civil society organizations, private sector, local financial institutions, some national governments and national governments for the deployment of all of these instruments. And these instruments are going to finance all of our 4 thematic pillars with the 3 transversal pillars as core. Money will be deployed as available. So, part of my role will still be to support fundraising efforts. So as we fundraise, there's going to be more or less resources in each of the pillars for each of the instruments that we're putting together. But the idea long term is to raise money for all the pillars, for all the instruments. Next slide. And so far, so as of January 2022, these are the resources that we have put together. There are 2 categories of finance. The bank's balance sheet. So we are, we're putting, we're walking the talk by actually putting IDB money into this initiative, both in the form of technical assistance money, which is the seed transitory OCSDP for the Amazon, which is an internal name for a project preparation facility that we have put together with grant money from our own balance sheet. And then we're working with our clients to actually utilize or incentivize them to utilize part of the IDB envelope, which is AAA money, very cheap, for interventions within the parameters of the Amazon initiative. And then in addition to our own balance sheet, we're bringing money from the donor community. And as of today, we have a multi-donor trust fund, which is about $35 million with contributions from the governments of Germany, the Netherlands, and we are having conversations with other donors. And then a very large GCF Amazon Bioeconomy Fund, and Amazon Bioeconomy Fund, specifically for private sector operations, financed with the Green Climate Fund. And that will be a $600 million fund overall to be deployed over the course of 7 years. And the idea is to bring additional concessional finance. But this is the money that we have as we speak. So donor money, it's about $350 million. And from the IDB side, the counterparty would be around $250 million as of today. So we have, 600 million plus. So this is the overall initiative. And but we wanted to kind of introduce you to the whole concept. More than happy to discuss any specific aspects. But we also wanted to introduce you within this big framework to a very specific opportunity that we think might be a good fit for this group. But again, more than happy. We're just starting. All of these funds have just been put together to have follow-up conversations and answer any specific questions about the framework of any of these funds. So with that, Yves, over to you.
Thank you, Daniel. I think this was very important part of the presentation. And now just going to some very detailed activities that we are working on. Basically, when we are looking for this initiative, we will need to instrument to manage this. And as most of you have already been listening about these projects that we are already developing, the Leticia Herencia Colombia platform, that it's a matchmaking platform between investor, donors, and project on the field, will be very important and instrumental for us. So basically, as an update also, We just finished a prototyping of the platform last year, and we are just starting the development of the platform now. And this platform, as you can imagine, will be very important to support all the activities of the initiative. And now we are starting the development of the platform. It's a very, very strong artificial intelligence backend. So basically, the idea is when any organization is proposing a project and they are going to place the project and the profile of the project within the platform, the artificial intelligence backend will automatically categorize, analyze the value and the potential impact of the project to support and help investors and donors to make the right decision. So this is a project that we are starting now in this phase of development, and is led by WWF that we are partnering with to develop the platform. And we are going to work with Visuality, the Basque Center for Climate Change, and Google to develop the platform itself. So we will update you on this advance, because I think this is something that it's important for everybody, and also getting information and an idea to support this project. And just to finish, to give you a sense of what are we working with Daniel, the rest of the team. So we have already a new unit in the IDB that it's exclusively dedicated to manage the Amazon initiative. And this unit is going to be consolidated and grow. But again, as Daniel was saying, this is an IDB group response. So we have people from the different windows of the IDB group working with us on very specific topics. So today, most of the activities that we are doing is talking and working with our colleagues in the country offices, in the 8 country offices in the Amazonian countries, basically to be sure that the Amazon initiative has a real chapter in the strategies for each country. So we really want to be sure that the Amazon has a special place in the country strategy. So this is what we are doing now. And from this conversation and dialogue with the countries, the government, basically we are already identifying potential activities at the public sector level that are very important. So let's say that this is a very important piece of work that we are doing now, is programming and be sure that we are aligning all the efforts and priorities with the countries. The second level, as Daniel was talking, it's very important for us, all the relation and how we can strengthen the capacities of local communities, indigenous, Afro-descendant, and also local communities. And within the initiative, we have reserved a budget to support a community grant program. So it's basically kind of small grant programs that we are going to implement in the region to be sure that these community businesses that are so informal that they have very hard time to access resource in the, let's say, in the traditional processes. We really want to be innovative and work with partners, and listening from you also to see how we can really implement this community grant program in a co-creation mode with the community groups like POICA and other indigenous or Afro-descendant community groups that basically will allow us to really reach the last mile beneficiaries on the field and be sure that we have an inclusive approach of this. And basically, this is what we are doing now, and we will also for sure connect with some of you also to be sure that we can collect as much idea and also see how we can envision some partnership on that. The other point that is very important is all the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So how are we going to move the needle on some sector, to innovate, to find new solution? So basically fighting the status quo with innovators, with entrepreneurs, basically to work on two types of projects. The productive projects that's basically very linked to the bioeconomy commitment that we have, is the productive projects that we want to support, and the innovative project also. But we have also a very important line that are the enabling projects, that are the must-have technologies, projects, models that will allow really to make this process of bioeconomy inclusive and to connect everybody to the value chain. So this is what we are looking. We have already been partnering with our colleagues in WEF and OneKey.org with the first challenge on bioeconomy last year. With the IDB Lab, we are now finalizing a shortlisting to see which kind and which of these projects we can support and to start to create a pipeline of entrepreneur-led projects in the initiative. On the fourth point is we are also committed to support local and indigenous communities organizations. So we are now working with KOICA and also their partner to see how we can really help them to commit with, for example, the commitment and the project of the A2025 that they have been launching in different international events, and basically looking how we can improve the sustainability and the business model from KOICA, basically to be sure that they are in all the conversation and be able to participate as a technical partner in different kind of projects. And finally, we have also colleagues that are dedicated to create a plan, a gender and diversity plan, to be sure that this transversal line will be automatically included in all the projects and the activities that the initiative is going to implement. So this is basically where we are, and this is the first talk. We are very open to receive idea and to interact with you. And also we have these 4 persons. So Caroline is working with us on all the programmation and the relation with the countries. Veronica is our colleague working on diversity and gender. And you already know Daniel and Eve. And basically, we will be happy to connect with you in the future. So thank you. And now we can be responding to any question.
Great, thanks so much. If you could end the slideshow, then we'll be able to
Yes.
see each other. And I want to encourage you both, Yves and Daniel, to post your email addresses in the chat because they were in the slide, but it's hard to copy information from slides. So we have 7, possibly more people who are ready to ask questions. I usually have a question after these, but this is a really popular call. There are almost 80 people on it. Let's go ahead. I'd like to ask each person making a question to introduce yourselves very briefly in your institution, if you have one, and then keep your question very brief because we only have a half hour to get through everybody. So first up, Suzanne.
Hi, thanks everybody. Fantastic presentation. I love it. I'm with Cattail Strategy, and we are an organization that aligns Indigenous and community-led organizations with private multi-year flexible capital to actually achieve their own vision of well-being, with an understanding, like you have obviously understood as well, that sort of community-centered Indigenous-led movements will actually lead to longer, more sustained, more resilient, regenerative business models. My question was partially answered, so I'm going to adjust it to ask, how are you attending to, I've worked in several different configurations that were both international and sort of multi-ethnic and multilingual, like anything in the Amazon would end up being, including Indigenous communities. I see that you're working with KOICA. I'm curious, how are you envisioning you know, the relationship between the power of bringing money in to what are like very entangled community systems and allowing for the best possible human potential to rise out of that, given that we might be at a point where we have maybe one shot for the rest of humanity right here. Is there a alliance building and strengthening piece to your work? And how do you consider the people on the ground and the historic traumas that have gotten us to where we are as outsiders coming in with the resource of money?
Great, Yves, Danielle, you're up.
Thank you, Susan. So I can try to respond this one. So basically, the approach with KOICA is a multi-layered approach. So we are going to be concentrated much more on the way we can go deeper on the let's say KOICA business model to understand better how they're functioning, how they can be represented or considered as a technical partner for other organizations. For example, the traditional way when you have a big project, you're doing a call to identify an executing agency or a partner to develop the project, and usually KOICA is not on on the conversation. So why are they not in the conversation, and how could we help them to be at this level of conservation? So we are going to focus first on COICA, let's say, headquarter, and the way we want to understand better the strength and the weaknesses they have. And later we are going to go more region-wide with their partner and the local community. So this is a multi-layered approach that we are going to do. At this stage, we don't know precisely how we are going to work on the last mile participant and all these things, because this is something that will be defined during the previous phase of activities.
Okay, next up is Cameron.
Great, thank you. My name is Cameron Dubes, and I work with All1.eco. I'm actually kind of representing a variety of different organizations, but the question has really been asked, but because I was curious about the indigenous, but I just wanted to bring your attention to the Amazon Reforest Alliance, which Becky Piaco, the chief of the Ashaninka, and the Iwanawa are very involved in. Just wanted to bring that to your attention. I'll post a link in the thread. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that. Next up is Ned.
Thanks. You may have also answered this when you talked about the WWF visuality partnership, but I'm curious, given the list of challenges you put up front in that first thing about divergent models, different perspectives, different priorities, how you were thinking about a rigorous approach to strategy optimization and selection, as well as IB&B and MRV of various different programs and impacts, especially for performance-based investment. And are you leaning heavily on that team to develop the tools, et cetera?
Yeah, so I think maybe I can answer that one. So the idea would be to provide a lot of support for project preparation, MRV as well. We do acknowledge that that's one of the critical challenges for many of these sectors, and also a way also to enable the environment for future funding. So this is a critical area, and within each of our funds, we're actually allocating a significant amount of money for specifically for that. In terms of the programming of the origination, a lot of it is going to come from our country offices. So the country offices will be the primary kind of point of contact in each of the countries. And then a lot of what we do will depend on the nature of the client. We're talking about government entities, including local organizations. We're going to be coordinated with the local governments for the IPLC piece. It's something that is going to happen more directly. And for the private sector side, it's going to be our private sector colleagues doing some of the work. But the idea would be to work with organizations that are, bringing ideas that can and deliver impact. And again, acknowledging that this is a critical point, this is probably going to be one of our priority areas, both project preparation, facilitation, and MRV.
Thanks. And you're open to outreach on that?
We do, yes. We're open.
Thanks.
Great, next up is Devika.
Hi, so I represent a community organization, Health in Harmony. We work with IPLC communities in the Xingu, Sacs, and the Amazon to provide healthcare and support forest economy. So your community grants program is of great interest. And my question is an extension of what Ned asked, which is really, what is the process? Can community organizations apply directly, or would we have to partner with the local government or some other way to access the funding? And what ticket sizes are you envisaging for these grants? Thank you.
And thank you, Devika. I think this is basically a very early stage project that we are managing. So we still have not the detail on the implementation of the project. We have the resource, we have the commitment. Now we are starting to work on the how. So basically, how do we want to implement this project? And there is a lot of questions. For example, technically, the project is saying small grants program for communities. And basically, this could become credit program for communities if the credit is managed by the community. So we are starting to design the project. We are going to obviously basically ask and also do some consultation also to understand what has been done, what has been functioning, what has not been functioning. So we are today talking with different actors that are very important, managing small grant program, for example, to be sure that we will have the best response and an updated implementation model for this kind of thing. But at this stage, the idea is to have a project that can be co-created with the local organization, for example, COICA and the member of COICA in each country. And basically, what we are looking for is to have the most innovative and sustainable model. So because it's grant, it's not meaning that the money has not to come back to the IDB, but it can become, for example, a credit fund managed by communities. So this is something that we want to have a more sophisticated response, and we are just starting to design this.
Super, thank you so much.
Great. Next up is Daniel Machado.
Hi, thank you so much, Eve and Daniel, for the presentation. I'm Daniel Machado. I'm a finance analyst here in ICLEI, Local Government for Sustainability. And ICLEI is currently holding a project at the Amazon. It's called Amazon for the Climate, in which we develop a diagnosis of financing needs for local governments in the Amazon. And most of the questions appear here as well, such as minimum tickets, and if local governments have very difficult time trying to get credit. So is this project can it be accessed by local governments, and is it thought to be a region-wide approach for local governments? Because normally there's so many small cities in the Amazon that cannot have credit. So is this, well, in some stage of this project, would it be accessible for these local governments somehow?
Thank you for the question. Yes, the idea would be, especially for the technical assistant grant portion, the funds will be accessible for cities and local governments. Depending on the nature of the challenge, it might make sense to do it either locally or to do it within the context of a regional project. So that has to be considered within the specific circumstances. One of the first projects that we're thinking about is actually a project to do knowledge sharing between Amazonian cities within Brazil. So that's one of the first priority, one of the first projects that we're thinking about and putting together. So again, local governments and cities are going to be a very important area of work for us, and they will be able to access resources directly, especially grant funding. We have certain limitations for the provision of credit for local governments. We usually work at the state level or at the national level, at the state level in the case of Brazil, and only at the national level in the rest of the Amazonian countries. But certainly for technical assistance grant operations that seek to strengthen the capacity of cities, especially to think about their development model within the context of the Amazon biome, are going to be are of interest to us.
Great, thank you, Daniel M and Daniel H. And fortuitously, the next question is from Amy Daniels.
Yes, hi. Thanks so much for the great presentations. I just want to quickly point out before I get to my question, a couple of things in response to some of the discussion. I know folks with IDB have been in touch, over the past couple of years about USAID Brazil's development and now implementation of the Amazon Biodiversity Impact Investment Fund. It's the first impact investment fund, so it's market-based finance. And I just wanted to highlight or kind of update that we are running a parallel impact evaluation. And so if that's of interest, alongside the biodiversity business investments, we're trying to actually measure impact to see if it's a good idea or not. So if that makes sense to touch base on that, I'm happy to follow up. And then secondly, just in response to your comment, Yves, about possible community-based fund management. I don't know if you're aware of the experience we have in Pará State, where we actually had to change a law, but Quilombola communities were kind of enabled, and we put a structure in place and a governance structure in place for them to manage their own revolving fund. So those are just two highlights. And then my question was more, I apologize, I joined 10 minutes late, and I don't know if I kind of missed the big picture that I think you were presenting, Daniel. But I'm just curious if some of this is sort of market-based finance. I know with our experience to USA Brazil, we've had just a dearth of pipeline. And so I'm curious if some of these instruments in this broad portfolio that you mentioned are sort of intended to be business investments. I'm curious what kind of ticket size you're looking at and what sense you have of pipeline. Again, I'm coming from a Brazil perspective, but I'm really curious because we've certainly struggled with pipeline development and found that there's kind of a gap between working at a really, really small scale and the scale that we intended to invest at. There's sort of a gap in the middle there and a need for support in sort of developing that longer term pipeline so that there is investable opportunity.
Thank you, Amy. Yes, and first of all, yeah, we will be very interested in learning more about the experience of USA Brazil in these areas, because I think they can be extremely helpful to us, especially at this inception stage, to learn from your experience and also understand what are the areas of opportunity and things that maybe we should consider as we think about our own programming. To your question about investments, we are. The idea is that we're going to be deploying blended finance resources that will be concessional resources that we blended with IDB capital, particularly IDB Invest capital, or the capital of national development banks to do then either on lending through commercial banks or for the establishment of special purpose vehicles to be managed by those national development banks. And we also have allocated some resources to do direct equity investments and also to support this a fund that is doing investments in the Amazon region. So we're putting together several instruments, and the ticket sizes will vary. It really will depend on the type of intervention on the one hand, and of course the type of financing that is needed. We are really thinking about a role to be more catalytic than commercial as a whole. So a lot of our resources will be more towards either providing concessionality to the risk capital, or just to think about our own capital in a way that enables mobilization of private resources. And the idea is to complement that with a significant amount of TA resources, grant resources for project preparation, project enabling, and also trying to do some of the PPP work around a specific area. So the idea is to do a little bit of both, and our strategy is really to try to work with the entire ecosystem, national development banks, private intermediary financial institutions, and also experiment both on direct equity and even at the at contingent recovery type of grants, where basically we provide a grant that can be converted into equity if the organization is successful in terms of fundraising. So a little bit of all.
Great, thanks for that. Next up is Fabian.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I want to say thank you for everybody to come with this source of with some knowledge. My question is the following. We're gonna be working on the Amazon, that's the mean for all these reunions and meetings. But as we know, the indigenous people are a very important part of the whole outcome of this. So they will be the beneficiary, and therefore the whole world will be. So my question is, how we plan to educate them to understand all this sophisticated process that we're talking about here. Sometimes it's hard to understand, and how we're going to select the individuals that are well studied and study among the indigenous people, and also the talent is there. Again, I work with them, and I find a lot of talent people there. So how are we going to find this talent and educate them? And this question is for anyone.
Yes, thank you, Fabian. And this is a very important point, and also something that has been that we are doing in our conversation with the different groups, because we received some proposals from communities that were very sophisticated and let's say technology driven. For example, we received projects related with tokenization, with funding, with blockchain, and they were coming from communities. So what we are doing in the IDB today, we are collecting the information and creating groups of young, knowledgeable indigenous people in the different groups to help them to create a network and also to, let's say, spread the knowledge about the new technologies and opportunities. So this is basically what we've been doing, and it's very interesting to see the evolution of this group of young leaders, indigenous leaders. And also from the IDB side, we are committed also to work and also to hire as much as possible young indigenous people to be sure that we can strengthen this kind of network and use it to update them on the use of, for example, new models and technologies that can be very useful for them.
Thank you.
Great. Others are welcome. We have time. If others want to respond to Fabian's question, you're welcome to do so.
Hi, Jesse Hudson here, attorney at Woven Science, fostering entrepreneurship among indigenous communities in the Peruvian Amazon. And my question is a follow-up to the previous question. And that's that if we do have people who might be good referrals for this network, young indigenous leaders and entrepreneurs, how could we get them in touch?
I guess that's a question for me as much as the IADB. Feel free to email me or to write me on chat. I'll put out my email address. Yves and Danielle have shared theirs. Ezra is going to be up next. But as far as the Amazon Investor Coalition, anyone can send an email to contact@amazoninvestor.org or to my email, which is jonah@amazoninvestor.org. And you can also subscribe to the newsletter on the website. Yves and Danielle, did either of you want to respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the contact information is there. We will, love to connect with the young leaders from the Amazon region, especially if they are from indigenous communities of our resident communities. So our contact information is there, and please feel free to reach out to us as well.
Okay, Ezra.
My name is Ezra. I work with Earthshot Labs. It's a technology company based in the Bay Area, but we're working in Brazil, supporting projects, landscape level projects, as well as indigenous-led small scale efforts in the Amazon basin. I'm wondering, so we support projects through technology, but also have on the ground operations as well. In some of our projects, particularly at a watershed or landscape level, we are looking into land acquisition as one part of the overall conservation strategy. I was just wondering if this program, if that would be applicable, eligible for finance. And is land acquisition coupled with large scale reforestation for carbon benefits, so carbon financing. That's kind of the approach we're working with. So I just wanted to ask about that.
Depending on the scale, it could be a good opportunity for a private sector window, IDB Invest. It will depend on the scale. Probably for those type of transactions, probably it will have to be born it will have to have certain ticket size. But agroforestry is always an area of opportunity. Of course, we have to look into the specifics of the opportunity and the different dimensions associated to it, but in principle, it's something that we can take a look at.
Okay. Yeah, no, exciting to learn about this very ambitious program and all the different levels of the program that you're envisioning and the potential for impact. So yeah, I'll follow up with some more questions about the various projects we're working on.
Great, Cameron.
Thanks, Jonah. Yes, I actually also am working I'm a fundraising consultant working with the Open Society Foundations and their work and their global drug policy program. And I know they have a great deal of interest in supporting farmers in Colombia in particular with coca production. And so, because of, the drug war, unfortunately, is decimating the crops. I just wanted to put this out there for anybody on the call. If there's anybody that has interest in this issue, or we'd love to hear from you. You can send it to me, or if anybody can respond to that, I'd certainly welcome that. Thank you.
Danielle or Yves, do either of you guys have a response about that?
I think the whole thesis about our bioeconomy approach is precisely to generate alternative income generation models within the Amazonian territory. So of course, things like cocoa or coffee or any other, suitable, crop that could be an alternative to coca plantations, the type of work that we're thinking about. Yeah, Cameron.
Actually, what I understand is that there are other uses for coca, like fertilizer and things like that. So there are alternatives.
Yeah, unfortunately, that will be outside. Unfortunately, that will be outside the scope of the things that we can do.
That said, I think there are philanthropists in our network that are interested in alternative income generation opportunities involving coca. So I'll be in touch with you and Kasha about that. Okay, other questions? We have 5 minutes left. Thanks. We have a very large and diverse community. Feel free, anybody can come off mic and ask a question. Please, not everybody at once. That was a joke to get you guys all to come on.
I guess I have a general question, which is directly related to this. Goes back to the question of bridging the gap between kind of small funding going into small local projects versus deploying, significantly larger amounts of money into a network of projects. Some small. We're operating at Digital Gaia under our hypothesis that the sort of disparity and the difficulty in getting alignment and coordination between the capital and the impact, as well as agreement amongst all the different players as to this is the optimal thing to do, given the global strategies put into a local solution. I'm just curious whether that is in fact a core part of the problem, because a lot of it boils down to a lot of things in the slides today the IDB was talking about, but that are particularly difficult to solve. I don't know if that question makes sense because I'm just trying to make it up as I go, but I'll see what you guys think.
If you want to take that one.
I don't know if I get the right question, Ned. Could you just perhaps rephrase a little bit?
Right. I mean, when we look at these large systems projects, you may have a lot of capital out there that's trying to go after carbon solutions and a lot of great ideas to go after carbon solutions. But the closer you get to deployment on the ground, you start to have other competing interests, whether they're local interests, economic interests, political interests, or whatever. And so, and then there's other money that might be more interested in indigenous people or whatever. And so you get a lot of noise and a lot of inefficiency in the system trying to get the amount of capital we need to deploy actually to the ground. And a lot of that is in, I think, rethinking the way we do strategy development, looking at the whole system and trying to make sure that we got strategies that are optimized for the system as it actually exists in the world, and that the money is lined up with that, and the actions are lined up with that, and the people who are doing MRV or assessment are lined up with that, so that everybody's operating off the same playbook versus coming at it from their own proprietary perspective or their own political perspective or whatever it is. And it just seems like we gotta, which is what we've talked about in these calls, is we just have to do things differently to get the money into the system and to get the solutions deployed and to figure out what's working, what's not working, so we can adapt along the way. And And I think that's a system approach with system technologies. And when you started, you mentioned things like Web3 and crypto, like those are uniquely good at that stuff. They're not uniquely good at selling art maybe, but they're uniquely good at that stuff. So I'm just curious how many of us are thinking about how those solutions can be deployed. I know Earthshot's working on parts of this and Regen and others, but at this scale, it's a different problem.
Yeah, thank you, Ned. My comment on this is from an IDB point of view, what we really want is to take advantage exactly of what we are doing now is we are not going to have the final solution from E to Z. So basically we need to have a community-driven approach, taking as much knowledge as we have. So for example, and this is again acknowledging the work that Jonah and the Alliance have been doing. Basically, we really want to be sure that we will have the complete vision of the different kind of solution, the people who can really deliver the solution and creating the best framework to do that. So this is why we call the initiative more like a framework, that we want to be sure that this will be community driven. So basically we want to hear about the best options, the best solution, what has been functioning, what is not functioning, the different levels. We've been talking about ticket size, we've been talking about granularity, we've been talking about complexity. So there is no a single response to that, and there is not a single strategy. But if we can have a really community driven, as we are now thinking about the problem, the complexity, we will consolidate this strategy as much as we can. So this is why it has to be a participative process and a participative initiative and a community-driven initiative too.
Thank you. And thanks, Jonah, for your input there in the chat. Appreciate that.
Great. We are at the top of the hour. This is when we reach what we call water cooler time, where anyone can come off mic and do shameless self-promotion, or can ask further questions in an unstructured way of Danielle and Yves, and you're welcome all to use the chat for networking. Thank you so much for your time. Yves and Danielle, can either of you guys stay on for a little while? Okay, great. So the speakers will stick around with us, and thanks so much for showing up, and may the show and the chat begin and here. So anyone, you're welcome to speak now.
Hello, everyone. Hi,
Hey,
my name is
Amanda.
Amanda. How are you? I'm Amanda. I'm from Brazil. I'm an entrepreneurship here in Amazon. I work with more than 40 indigenous community. I have a small business that sells handcrafts from the indigenous communities in a fair price. From to Brazil, to everywhere in Brazil, and also abroad to other countries. And we are now looking for more investments to scale up our business, since we've been with the being small as we are today, we've been impacting more than 32,000 of hectares of forest standing and helping more than 200, let me try again, 250 women's artisans that work in Amazon. So if you want to know more about Tucum Brazil, please, I will leave our website and also my contact. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks so much. And Amanda, anyone else?
Hi, Jonah, this is Nianta. I just thought I'll stay and say Happy New Year, because I don't know if you said that at the beginning, but I missed the beginning. So, you know, here we are in 2022, and you started something, and, you know, what did they say? If you build it, they will come. and people have been coming, and you're gathering many of us across segments of rainforest conservation. And I have to say, at the COP, I don't know who's still here, it was a completely different COP for any of us in the rainforest conservation space than I had been to. And I was only going since Copenhagen, so not from the beginning, but was very, very different. It was like it was time for forests, and people were catching up, and the corporate and the finance side of it in a way that I'd not seen before. So now the challenging part, and this is why it was really great to hear you guys talking about what you're doing at IDB, because the challenge is there's all this money that's being pledged, and so much of it, right? I mean, people are talking in billions and occasionally trillions. And then all this work at the community level, which is in, I think a couple of people actually chimed in and said, it's so small where the real impact is happening. Anyway, some of us are coming together and have created and announced the Rainforest Collective as a way of how do we bring all of our voices together and find the pathway, help the pathways down and up come together. So super excited to be part of this community and hanging with the world in this world of rainforest conservation, and leading the way for the rest of the world to come along and do what we have to do. Not that much time left. So thank you, Jonah.
Thank you,
for
Nyata.
your leadership and getting us, getting a whole bunch of us started. So, and connected here in these conversations. And I think that's the one other thing I will thank you for, because, and yes, many of us don't get that much time to come and join you every Monday, but it's one good place to find friends and to do quick check-in and have quick conversations, and you've provided that that forum. So I, for my part, am very grateful for what you've provided. So
my pleasure.
I hope
Thanks so much
more
for
of
joining
us,
us.
yes, I hope more of us collaborate more and more, because that's what it's going to take.
I'd like to invite someone else who's new to the network to introduce herself and share about her work. Ursula, great to see you here. Could you tell us a little bit about your work?
Hi, yo. Unfortunately, I'm in the street. I'm not able to do my camera, but I just started to build land portfolios in Bolivia and Paraguay. The goal is to start a reforestation. Now, obviously, it's soybean intensive agriculture, but the goal is to change everything, and do something with agroforestry.
Thanks for joining us. Would others like to introduce themselves or have questions?
Good to see you, Eve. Great, really interesting. You probably feel the impatience on the part of the small organizations on this group, because we're keen to see how to, start work and applying for grants and all of that. But it's very encouraging because you've come a long way since you first started this probably a year ago. So good to hear all the work that's been put into this effort.
Thank you, Christina. Yes, and I think the message is, and again, I think we need to work together on that. And this is, from my point of view, this is a one-shot thing. So we can't miss. So we really need to add everybody experience, share, and as you said, Nyata, there is resource, and we must really have an impact, the greater impact we can. And to me, frankly, I think this has to be knowledge sharing, community driven, and all these things that we are already doing. We at the IDB, we want to do it. We want to do it differently. This is the first initiative that is geographically focused, because usually we are sector focused. So this means we have a huge flexibility, and we need also to be sure that we will have everybody on board to give idea, to share idea, to participate, to contribute to the process. We are going to build the tool. So I told about this platform. So the question is how I can participate, how I can share my knowledge, how can we be part of this? And this is something that we are going to create and build to be sure that we have. But again, the work that Jonah and the coalition has been doing is very great, and hopefully we can keep this conversation ongoing, doing updates and seeing opportunities, and inviting you to some let's say opportunities to think about how we can have this greater impact.
Great. Yves, I want to say this has been the most popular call we've had so far. We got up to 80 people,
Wow.
which is impressive. A lot of people are very curious about the IDB's work in the region. One thing that would I think would help me and maybe help others is if you could tell us about the discrete roles of IDB Invest and the IDB Lab and the IDB Climate Lab.
Sure. So the IDB has three main windows. So the IDB as a public bank. So this is where all relation and support are going to the government. So part of the resource that we have in the initiative will be also resource allocated to public sector. For example, a public bank in some of the countries want to create a specific area of bioeconomy, so we can give resource for loans to the bank, basically to habilitate it, to enable this kind of activity. But if the bank say, oh, but we don't have the people to manage this, we can give them a technical cooperation to train and to create this special unit. So this is what we are doing with the public bank. On the IDB Invest, is much more the private sector bank. So it's if there is some companies who say, obviously they are working as a certain level of companies. So basically they can give loans to this company to improve their model, to improve the access to the market, for example. So this is the private sector window that they can also support initiative, for example, related with bioeconomy and value chains. And the IDB Lab, I was working with the IDB Lab before the initiative. It's the lab from the IDB group. It's where basically very nice things happen. So it's where people with good idea can come and get support to develop a pilot, a prototype, an MVP for a new solution. So for example, we've been working a lot with blockchain application for social development, for economic inclusion. And for example, there is a lot of different kind of technologies and innovative models that we've been supporting with the lab. So the lab it has its own funding, but they have 100 people working basically on innovation and entrepreneurship. And so there is also other activities like the Natural Capital Lab, that it's part of the climate change department that is focused on all things related with natural capital valuation, conservation, restoration, and all these things. So in the IDB, there is some groups that are specializing on different kind of niche of activities that are interesting for our Amazon approach.
I have a question for everybody. I'm looking at Enrique's name and thinking of the permanent protection areas in the Andes. Earlier, somebody was talking about shared MRV, monitoring, reporting, verification, and how the burden of creating those monitoring systems can slow down any individual business, and how the creation of shared systems can make it easier for viable businesses that want to have a social environmental impact but have problems measuring it. can really be viable. And I posted the Amazon Sustainable Supply Chain Mechanism. I'm wondering if anybody knows of a survey of blended finance instruments that have been developed and experimented with in the Amazon, like that. The intermediaries. There's so capitalism in the Amazon doesn't look like it does in the outside world, and dozens of people have tried to develop innovations on it. Has anybody seen a landscape analysis of what is out there? Would anyone find such a landscape analysis valuable? Has IDB been working on one?
I have no clear idea on that, John, at this stage. I must look closer from an IDB perspective.
Okay, it's something I think could be really helpful. Atosa, do you want to tell us a little bit about the latest of your team? You're on mute.
Hello, everybody. Great to be back on this. Happy New Year. So yeah, the Amazon Sacred Headwaters Initiative, which is what I've been spending the last 3 or 4 years working on, is an indigenous-led alliance working to protect the headwaters of the Amazon region in the Ecuadorian Amazon and northern Peruvian Amazon and the Napo, Pastaza, Marañón watersheds. I just put in the chat the link to the summary of the bioregional plan, which we've been working in a participatory basis with the indigenous organizations and their base communities to create. It's a holistic, dream, a future for the economic and ecologic transition, a transition to a standing forest bioeconomy. It's pretty detailed in terms of its what it's trying to achieve. And right now we're moving from basically planning to what it would take for implementation, including the establishing of a Sacred Headwaters Fund that would be capitalized and also co-governed with indigenous organizations and leaders. And yeah, so I just want to share that with you and say we're open to dialogue, and we're in the process of continued strategic planning now around its, sort of the first pilot programs and strategies for implementation. And yeah, it's very exciting. It's very ambitious. We're under no, no pretense that this is a super ambitious plan, and hope that the size and scale of the vision is itself an inspiring effort to encourage collaboration. It's all about collaboration. So yeah, so that's, I just share that with you all and say I'm open to discussing it more with folks as they see interest. Oh, I should also mention, I will also mention, we are looking at a monitoring, evaluation, and learning system with Blue Marble, with Glenn Page and the Sustainometrics. And it's really exciting. It's participatory as well. And it's helping look at the theory of transformation and co-creating that and setting up systems and metrics for monitoring and learning, an adaptive learning process for the impacts of the strategies. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. Anyone else? I noticed a few people joined us after the top of the hour. For those who might not know, the hours switch. We now start at 2 p.m. Eastern time each week instead of 3 p.m. Eastern time, US time. So you may have come into the second hour of this call and not known it. Would anyone else like to share?
Jonah, perhaps a naive question, how could we envision the continuity of this conversation? How can we at the IDB side be sure that all the group can have the right information and also basically share information on the advance of the initiative and the opportunities, and we will also work, as I was saying, we've been partnering with the OneT.org web people and friends also on challenges. So I would say we are going also to have opportunities to share with you and to engage with all the members of this group.
Great. So I see a couple of answers. One is we have the email addresses of the majority of the people who showed up. They'll be added to our mailing list. When there are new announcements, we can send a broadcast. Most of those already did get an announcement through email just about this call. We have a number of calls set up later this year. There are plenty of vacancies in the calendar. We can book you or other members of your team, maybe more junior members of your team, or maybe even partners to present updates. You know, if we want to talk about an IDB update for Colombia specifically, for example, I think that would be interesting to a whole segment of this call, of those people in our audience that may not have shown up. So I think future Monday events like this, we can also do some collaborative events. You know, it's a large network we have segmented them by the investors, by those focused on carbon. We don't have all the intelligence on those in our audience, but we can convene discrete groups around interest areas. So we should go ahead and start a bilateral dialogue about doing that. If you have a broader question to our network, you know, such as you want to conduct an investment survey or a philanthropy survey to figure out what people's appetite is for blended finance or something, I could see us, you know, blasting a request for people to fill out a survey to the network, and that'll allow us to get some information. As far as like one-on-one tactile stuff, we have been doing a lot of one-off connections between people. So a startup will want to meet investors, or investors want to meet a certain kind of startups. And so in an ad hoc way, we are connecting people. We are planning to launch, you can hear the dog in the background, sorry about that. We are planning to launch later this year 3 transaction enablers for the region. One to help connect investors with investees, another one to help connect grant makers with potential grantees, and then a third to help corporate buyers connect with producers across the region. And then we hope to be creating stages where all 3 of those different stakeholders come together in a coordinated strategy. So one answer is more of the same. Another answer is we're going to be coming online with a lot of new programming that you guys will plug into well.
Thank you.
Okay, you bet. So I think we're nearing the end of this call. I'd love to invite a couple of people whose names I don't recognize to introduce yourselves. Dimitri, Sabina, and Carlos, would you guys like to come off mic and introduce yourselves? Sabina, are you there? Or
yes,
Carlos?
hi.
Hey,
hi.
Go ahead. Could
hi,
you introduce yourself
everyone.
to us?
Sure. My name is Sabina Wexler. I work for BNP Paribas in very close coordination and cooperation with IADB. I'm part of the official institutions coverage team based in New York, and I cover all the supranationals that are US or LATAM based. And I also have a second hat, which is sustainability specifically.
Great. Could you share your email with me? You can share in the private chat.
Sure, I will.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
You bet. Dimitri, would you like to introduce yourself? I'm not sure if you're there. Fred, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'd love to do that. Hello, everyone. I'm Fred. I'm the CEO of the Open Forest Protocol, which is a project aiming at building an MRV tool for smaller and medium-sized projects in the forestation sector. And we're currently building our products and being ready in a few months to launch product, and happy to connect with everyone who is interested in that space. And of course, super happy to connect, especially with projects on the ground. And as we'll be open source, it's really a system where we try to look at things a bit differently than the usual way. And I think I left my email in the chat, but I can write it back again.
Okay, great. Great. I think, Carlos, did you take an opportunity to introduce yourself? if you're there. Or Sid. Okay, thanks so much, Fred. I got it in the private sec. Oh, hey, Sid. I recognize you. You've been here before. Oh, you're eating. Okay, no worries. Okay. Okay, everybody. Unless anyone else has other questions, I think we can call it a wrap.
Thank you,
Fred,
Jonas.
you bet. Thank you, Atosa. Fred, I'll be reaching out to you and your team to present in a future call.
Okay, super, great. Love that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you so much.
Okay, guys. Thanks so much. Talk to you next week.
Thank you.
You bet. I'm going to leave the room open for those who want to copy the chat.